Welcome to the Hey Dad podcast, a conversation where you join David and Reese at the table as they talk about the many questions of life. Whether you're in the car, at the gym, or just distracting yourself from being productive. Why don't you pull up a chair? We're glad you're here.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hey Dad podcast, where you join us at the table as we talk about the many questions of life. I'm Reese.
And I'm David.
And he's my dad. We're going to go ahead and jump in with the question of the day. So, Dad.
Yes.
First of all, did you know that we have a video option now for the podcast?
No way. You mean we're actually on video? People can see what we look like?
At this very moment.
That is impressive.
Yeah. So we now have this YouTube option. It's very low resolution.
Yeah.
So if the audio has dialed down a little bit in quality or the video doesn't look super fancy, it's because we're starting. But this is our first official video episode. So cheers to us.
Yeah. We're pretty happy about it.
It's to you. You know, it's all for you.
It's about you.
And it's been almost a year of doing this podcast.
Yeah, we're coming up on a year pretty soon.
Mm-hmm. It's not going to be that long. So we've been doing this for a while. We've kind of got the format down a little bit better. So, you know, we figured it was kind of time to take this step and reach people who are on YouTube. So if you're new, welcome. We're glad to have you. But anyway, we usually start out this whole thing with a question of the day. So we're going to go ahead and jump into that. Padre.
Yes.
Would you prefer money for a housekeeper, a cook, a gardener, or a personal secretary?
I would probably go with the housekeeper first. I just don't like cleaning my house.
Fair enough.
I'm not that into my yard, so the gardening thing is not a huge thing for me.
Right.
I like to cook. I enjoy that part. So I think the housekeeper, I just don't like cleaning. I do it, but it's not my favorite thing. And I'm not like super at it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. For me, I'm going to have to go actually with a gardener / landscaper because my wife is into gardening.
She is.
And what that does is that makes me the gardener.
She has ideas for you to do.
Yeah. Now, in her defense, Emily, if you're watching this, don't beat me up. Basically what she does is she takes care of like flowers. She takes care of general plant maintenance. But like she mentioned that a project we might have over spring break is totally clearing out the garden bed, removing all the weeds, getting all the stuff out, and, you know, putting new plants in, doing a total makeover. And it's not the most enjoyable thing to me.
It's not, when you think of spring break and getting some time off,
yeah,
that's not where your mind goes.
Yeah, I don't immediately go to like, man, I could do some gardening right now.
Is that why you kind of wanted to do a trip during spring break maybe?
Yeah, that's the goal. Yeah, it's be like, what if we went to Florida instead?
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Just throwing that out.
Although everyone's probably going to Florida, let's be real.
That's true.
The other element is I hate mowing the lawn. Guys, I'm literally allergic to grass. Like, it is a literal allergy for me. So, sneezing, eyes watering, all that good stuff. It actually, believe it or not, if I'm mowing, I have to wear a long sleeve shirt because if grass gets on my skin and sits there, it'll create whelps.
Get out.
So, it's not fun. It's not a fun process.
Yeah. And it was, I have to say, as a dad, having a boy, it was like, yes, cut the grass. He's highly allergic to grass. What? Yeah. Are you serious?
Yeah.
It was very aggravating.
But now I don't have a choice.
I know, it's your grass.
Yeah, sorry. Nobody's going to do it. So, yeah, and Emily's talking one day in the future about wanting to have a bigger yard. She's like, I want us to have land one day.
Oh, man.
And I'm like, but Emma, I'm going to have to take care of that land.
Yeah, tell her she wants woods.
Yeah.
That's what she wants. She don't want grass. She wants woods.
Yeah.
Wooded area.
Yeah. I mean... So, anyway, I would pay a gardener.
Yeah,
because
I get that.
I want somebody to take care of all that stuff.
Yeah, I like having a lawn. It looks good. I just don't want to do the work.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I can clean a toilet. I'll clean a toilet with the best of them. I'll clean the floors. I don't care. I can listen to a podcast while I'm doing that. It's harder to do that when your, mower's going like...
Yeah, you can't do it. You just can't.
Yeah, so I'm not going to lie. I do it sometimes. But anyway, yeah, that's what I would go with.
Yeah.
So we have been going through a series talking about what you have coined as the term the personal reboot. I think you saw it originally on a Facebook post, somebody saying they were doing a personal reboot.
Yeah.
And that got you thinking of the ways that we need to reboot in our lives.
Yeah.
And so we've talked about a couple different things about over full schedule, being busy, why we need a personal reboot. But now for the next couple of weeks, we're actually going to be taking a time of reflection for looking back to the past. Some of the past hang-ups, the junk, the things that have happened in our lives that we may not notice in the moment, but it is holding us back.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be diving into that. And so our first week, this week, we're going to be talking about the baggage known as past hurts. Now, if you don't mind, could you kind of define for us what you would classify as a past hurt?
Yeah, the past hurt is really about something that maybe has happened to you in the past, a hurt, that is still affecting you today. It's not just something that's in the past. It's something that's in the past that you still maybe think about a lot, or it comes up. You know, you may have been bullied.
Yeah.
You may have been abused. There may be some shame you're dealing with, betrayal, all of these things. And what happens is it either comes up a lot mentally, or you find yourself thinking about it, and maybe those feelings come back.
Right.
And a lot of those things, we tend to think, oh, I'm just bringing it up, it's not a big deal. But it really changes us today. And that's the problem, is those hurts a lot of times stay with us and bring, it kind of alters how we live our life right now.
Yeah, I like that you said sometimes we can tend to deny those things or run away from those things.
Yeah.
I know as a guy, we guys are not good at that.
Yeah.
We're not good at like really processing our past. We're like, well, I should just be strong enough to move on.
Yeah,
You know,
we do.
Who cares what happened? I'm just going to move forward. But the truth is, even if you pretend like it didn't matter, if it's affecting your today, it did matter.
Yeah, and we call it the baggage we carry because it's, imagine going through life carrying like a giant suitcase. Like if you're traveling somewhere and you've got a big suitcase, it's a hassle, you're tired, you got to go up and down steps or whatever. Imagine doing that in life where we're emotionally carrying these large things. We think, oh, it's not that big a deal. I've learned to live with it. But eventually it will wear you down.
You're right. I love the illustration of a suitcase too, because if you're having to carry around a suitcase, it can take moments that would be enjoyable and make them annoying or unenjoyable. Like I remember we got the joy of being able to go on a vacation to Italy.
Yeah.
And probably my least favorite part of our trip to Florence was when we had to take that giant 50-pound suitcase and carry it up 3 flights of stairs to get it to our hotel room because they didn't have an elevator.
No elevator.
So imagine if we had to take that suitcase everywhere we went.
Yeah.
Imagine if we had to bring it back down the stairs in order to go to a restaurant.
Yeah.
Imagine if we had to bring it with us to go to a museum. I could tell you I wouldn't have done as much stuff.
No, you get tired, you get worn out, and that's kind of what happens to us in life.
Yes. And that's precisely the problem is we can be carrying stuff like that without even knowing it.
Yeah, we don't, because we just don't think about it. We've learned to ignore it.
Give me some examples of what could be past hurts.
Okay, well, past hurts are things that maybe make you kind of easily, things that happen to you that, you know, like we talked about earlier. You've got the abuse, you've got bullying. Abuse could be parent, it could be another person, it could be emotional, physical, sexual. You know, a lot of things that happen to our life. We don't like to call it abuse, but we just weren't treated that well.
Yeah.
You know, and so sometimes as becoming an adult, we can kind of figure that out. You know, that was kind of messed up. Now, some of the stuff is obvious. If you were sexually abused, you know, if you were bullied, those kind of things are pretty obvious. But even then, we tend to, well, maybe it wasn't that big a deal. Or if you were sexually abused, sometimes part of it was probably my fault. You know, maybe I kind of wanted it or whatever. And so we play these mind games with ourselves, and it can really do some damage to us long term.
I think you're right. And since we don't have a normal practice of doing this in our lives typically, I think we kind of need some ways to understand how we could be carrying the baggage.
Yeah.
Maybe an idea
Yeah.
of some of the symptoms
Yeah.
of the problem. So you may be carrying the baggage of hurt if, and then you fill in the blank. And I think we need to do this not only this week, but in the coming weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
to
to
let
be able
people
to-
know.
Yeah, so people can do some reflection and see, am I having this going on?
Yeah.
So what would be something like that going on? Like, hey, you may be carrying hurt if.
Yeah. Well, understand if you're carrying a hurt, one, it doesn't mean it's your problem, that the problem is you. It just means you're carrying something. So understand that. It's not a judgment on you. It's just you discover you're carrying a giant suitcase. So there's certain situations maybe that you walk into and those feelings come back. So abuse situations, bullying situations, those feelings, let's say you're at the office and your boss begins to raise their voice at you and you get those same feelings you had when, as a 10-year-old, other kids bullied you. Well, that may mean there's some things in there that you still need to deal with, because what will happen is you'll tend to maybe shy away from speaking up when you should at work, or doing things like that, because those feelings are still there. If you were, let's say a guy, because I've talked to men all the time, and a guy whose wife cheated on him or left him, a lot of times what they're going to do is they're going to back away from relationships. And so what they'll do is they'll never give themselves to another person relationally, because maybe at 15 their girlfriend cheated on them or whatever, and it hurt them so bad, I'm never going to get hurt again. So they, get married, they're with a wife, but they're always holding something back. And so those kind of things can hurt us today. And that's why we want to really look at them honestly and say, okay, am I carrying around a giant piece of luggage?
Yeah, I think that's actually very insightful, because a lot of us we just avoid any situations, or we get triggered by something somebody says.
Yeah.
So maybe if you got bullied and people always called you an idiot, anytime anybody says anything that makes you feel remotely silly, you're like, oh, they're saying I'm stupid, and then boom, you blow up and you're just livid, you're angry, and you're like, where did that come from? You probably got some past hurt. And that means you got to go back and you got to look at it. Okay, so what's another symptom of dealing with hurts?
Well, if a lot of times you make your choices based on the hurt more than anything else. So, like I talked about, I never want to be hurt again by someone else. So I'm not going to get close to anybody. You've made a moral choice based on that. And also a lot of times we find ourselves either repeating the very same offense that was done to us. Like abusers tend to abuse, even if they do it a different way. Like they may think, I'm never going to be like my dad. My dad beat me physically. Well, maybe you don't beat physically, but maybe emotionally. Maybe with your words you beat up other people. And so a lot of times we find ourselves repeating the same thing, because a lot of times if you're bitter towards someone, you tend to take on some of those same characteristics, and you don't even realize it, because what's happening is you're dwelling on them. You're dwelling on that situation. So I think that's one of the big things that we have to really look at. We're kind of repeating the same thing. We're bitter toward people. We get, maybe we go to the opposite extreme. If your parents are very strict on you, a lot of times the kids tend to be very loose on their own kids. And then their kids don't like that, so then they become strict to their kids. And we see a pendulum, and that's kind of what happens a lot of times in families. Unhealthy pendulums are going back and forth because no one's actually dealing with the situation and doing the work of getting that hurt out of them.
I think that's very true, because like let's say you were someone who you dealt with a lot of shame as a kid. Like your parents shamed you a lot. And you felt like you were never good enough. And you're like, I'm never going to be like my dad, or I'm never going to be like my mom. And so you go to the opposite extreme and you tell your kid, you like have zero boundaries. And like, do whatever you want. Go wherever you want. Be whatever you want. And you've swung so far to the other end. Well, now that kid doesn't have the boundaries they need from you and the direction that they need from you, because you are still living out of the past hurt.
Yeah, and that's what happens. And a lot of times what we find is those past events, the reason they're a problem is they affect us now. You know, that we're living our life based upon those hurts. And that's what you don't want to do. I'm not saying we're blaming the hurts, because that's where people think, are you saying that everything's because of what happened when I was 10?
Right.
Well, some things are. And if you're living that way, you need to fix that.
Yeah.
Because if you're 40 now, but you're still reacting similar to what you reacted at 10 or based on feelings you had at 10,
right,
then what's happening is those feelings are controlling your life now. So essentially your hurt is still owning your life.
Yeah.
It's still there. Like if a girl was abused sexually, so I hate all men. I don't want to go out with men. I'm just going to live by myself. What's happening is a hurt that happened. It's a genuine hurt.
It's real. Yeah.
But it's affecting the rest of her life. And that's the problem. And so what hurts do is they really can change the way we live. So they're really hurting our future.
Yeah.
Not just our past.
That's so good. And I think that's an important thing that you said earlier, that past victimization, that did happen.
Yeah, it did.
Like, it doesn't mean that you have to pretend like it didn't happen.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean like let's say you were sexually abused. You know, that's real. That is horrific. That's traumatic. However, you don't want that to be the defining factor of your today and your tomorrow and your forever.
Yeah.
You don't want to give that person any more time than they already took from you.
Yeah, and that's the thing is the reason we deal with hurts is not because something's wrong with us. It's because we don't want it to affect our future.
Yes.
That's why we deal with our hurts. So we can live, it did happen to us, we don't deny it, but we deal with it, and then we live a life where that doesn't control us anymore.
Speaking of which, you give a great example of a character from a movie who continually lives in his past. Tell us about it.
Okay. To me, it always makes me think of Uncle Rico. You know, Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite. If you've never seen the movie, you need to watch the movie. But Uncle Rico was an adult who still kept saying, if Coach had just put me in. He was still living his high school days. And he had blown them up to where I could have done it. So it's really a comedic way of really illustrating how a lot of people live today.
Yeah.
They're still living among that hurt that was in 10th grade, that hurt that was in 7th grade. And so we kind of Uncle Rico it. We kind of dwell on it. You know, if Coach had just put me in, if I had just done this, if I had not gone to that house, if I hadn't hung out with these friends, if I didn't date that person. And so we'll tend to magnify that, and it affects everything that we do in our life.
Yeah. So now that we've got some of the symptoms dealt with, now, like, let's say somebody's like, yes, I do have some hurts. How do they practically deal with them? If you've got the suitcase, how do you learn to let it go? How do you learn to get the weight out of the suitcase?
Well, it is tough. I think one of the things to let the baggage go is you've got to really look at your hurt through the lens of where you are now as an adult. If you got hurt as a kid, you were a kid. So mentally, you didn't get everything. And sometimes we form our opinions based on what we thought, whether we're a child, a teenager, even young adult in some respects. You know, our brain isn't fully formed. We're not fully cognizant. We're not an adult.
Yeah.
So we think of our hurt from that perspective, where when you become an adult and you start getting some wisdom and you can look back on it and say, why did my parents act like that?
Yeah.
And it's not to blame your parents. It's just to look at the realization of it. My parents could have made a better choice at that time. It wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
You know, I was a kid. I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
So when you look at it from an adult perspective, it kind of helps you bring a little bit of balance to it. Because when you're a kid, you're looking at it from a kid perspective and you just don't know.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
Yeah. I think I like what you said earlier about how it's not your fault.
Yeah.
Right? If you have past hurts from somebody else, even if you played a part.
Yeah.
Like, let's say you were bullied as a kid and you started it. You said something to somebody and it turned you into a target.
Yeah.
Even then, the other person didn't have to respond that way. Other people were involved in that past hurt. And I think that's a key thing that differentiates hurt from some of the things we're going to talk about in the future.
Yeah.
Hurt involves the purposeful decisions of other people. Mm-hmm. And that's hard to let go of.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely vital too. And some of it's realizing that it wasn't your fault.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't all you.
Yeah, and that's what we do as kids. We think it's all us because in a child world, you're always thinking of the world from your perspective. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm a kid. That's what I think of. Yeah. But what we have to understand is we were just kids. It's just the way we were.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important we understand it's not our fault. And really with hurts, you need to get that outside help.
Right. Don't be afraid to get help.
Yeah. If you're going through a really hard time, something's struggling, you need to get some help. Either counselor, people who can pour into you, someone who's maybe more professional, especially if you're dealing with serious issues. Yeah. Because your friends, your family, they're great, but they may not know enough to help you.
Right.
And sometimes that third person who doesn't know anybody in the situation can give you a good outside perspective that you didn't have.
Right. No, I think that's very true. And I think another part of it, like getting help and then beginning to realize that you can move forward is another key, because your today doesn't have to be defined by yesterday.
Yeah.
So making decisions and starting to dream again, making decisions and starting to decide like, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that, and beginning to take steps towards that can kind of show you that there's life outside of your hurt.
Yeah.
There's life outside of what happened. And you don't have to use that past hurt as a filter for your present and your future.
Yeah, and that's what we want to do mainly. It's not so much to try to blame the hurt on someone else, to find someone to blame. It's to deal with it so you don't have to carry it anymore. That's the key. Mm-hmm. So you can live your better life now and not just live as a reaction to what happened when you were young.
That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. So we want to encourage you today, guys. Make sure to take some time to reflect, examine, hey, do I have any past hurts that are affecting me today? Mm-hmm. And then take some of those steps. We can't give you all of the steps. Yeah. These are just a few of the major ones that can help you begin to move forward and live free of that weight.
That's true.
All right, let's go ahead and jump into the question time of the day.
Yeah.
And y'all, if you want to send us questions, please do, whether on YouTube, on Instagram, even we have an email. So you can, any way you want to send us those questions. Because if you don't, we will make them up. We will make them up. So, all right, here's the first one. I'm not going to tell you if we made it up or not, but it's this. What is a good system to stop adding clutter to my life in the future? This just to put some context. Last week, we discussed why our life gets so cluttered and how we get overwhelmed by the many, many tasks of life. Mm-hmm. So once again, what's a good system to stop adding clutter to my life in the future?
I think it's one of the best things to do is not be so quick to say yes to things. Mm. You don't want to always say no. What you say is, let me think about it. Let me look. Let me see. Everybody gets that. If they say, hey, do you want to do this? Well, let me check. Mm-hmm. Let me look at my schedule. Let me look at where I'm at right now. Mm-hmm. If someone doesn't like that or tries to push you past that, then of course that's going to be an automatic no, because they're trying to manipulate you.
There you go.
What you do is you just say, hey, let me look, because you want to pause to make sure, do I really want to do this or not? It's kind of like sometimes when I'm looking at things, like I get an idea, oh, I may want to buy this. I'll put it in the cart, like on Amazon or something, and then I go do something else until the next day. Mm-hmm. You go back and you look and think, okay, do I really need this or not? And that's what you're doing with it. If I add this, you want to make sure you take the time to think through, what does it mean I take off? Because a lot of times we just say yes. Sure, I can do that. Oh, I can do that. But we never really think about, should I do that? Mm-hmm. Is it important? And again, I'm not saying you say no to everything. You just want to say, when you can say yes, you say yes with no regret.
Right.
I wish I hadn't said yes.
You say
I wish
yes
I hadn't.
with no regret.
And a lot of times we say yes and we regret it because we said it too quickly.
Yeah. Dang, that's good. That sounds like a Sounds like a really good tweet that I want to share. I'm going to make a Twitter just to share
Well,
that.
it's something I've done many times.
I think everyone has.
Everyone has. You say yes because you want people to like you.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to say yes, but sometimes we say yes when we know deep inside I shouldn't say yes.
Yeah, like the answer is I can do that.
Yeah.
But I shouldn't.
Yeah.
Right? That's not the best thing for me to do.
Yeah, and a lot of times we don't say no because we can't think of a good enough excuse. No is a complete sentence. Mm-hmm. I heard Henry Cloud say that recently. No is a complete sentence. You don't owe anything else. You can just say, I can't do that. Mm-hmm. Why not? I just can't. You don't have to give an explanation. But you do want to, I say take time because you want to pray about it and make sure, is this the right thing?
Right.
Because you don't want to get in the habit where nobody asks you because you always say no. But you want to look at, okay, is this a good thing or not? Is this what God wants me to do? Should I do it? And then if I'm going to do it, what am I going to drop?
Mm-hmm. I think the only other thing I would add to that, because yours is a good system for the moment-by-moment questions. Mm-hmm. I think the other element is having a regular rhythm of asking the questions we talked about last week.
Yeah.
What are my roles? What are my priorities?
Yeah.
Do they line up? And so, like, if every few months you go and you just look, it's almost the equivalent of, like, cleaning the clutter out of your room.
That's exactly what it
is. Every few weeks, you kind of just check.
Yeah.
Just give a little check, like, hey, is there anything that's out of place?
Yeah.
Is there anything I've left open? Is there anything that's kind of left unturned right now? Is it cluttered in here? And if the answer is no, keep moving on.
Yeah, you're
great.
good.
But if the answer is yes, all right, what needs to go?
Yeah.
Because the truth is, people will add things to your life.
Yeah, they won't. I mean, they're not doing it because they're mean.
Not malicious.
They just think, oh, he's really good or she's really good at this. And they just ask you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, we've got 2 more questions, but I'm only going to ask you one of them.
Okay.
Because I feel like we probably went over our time a little bit with our topic.
I know.
I'm going to go with this. What is the worst job you have ever had? Worst job you've ever had?
Okay. I've had a few, but probably one of the ones that I think I did it one day, maybe 2. I worked at a shrimp factory on the coast with a friend of mine. Mm-hmm. And it was horrible.
Yeah.
One, I wore jeans, which they got wet and they just sagged. It was not good.
Wet jeans are the worst.
Yeah, wet jeans, gosh. Anything is better than wet jeans. You would almost just want to take your pants off. But it was wet, it was cold, it was just miserable. Mm-hmm. And it made me realize, one, I never want to work in the shrimping industry.
Yep.
I love shrimp. I just don't want to get them. Mm-hmm. But it was just, it was miserable. And after a day or 2, they were like, that's all you need. And they probably said I was good, probably because I wasn't that good a worker. I tried to work, but I didn't know what to do. I felt goofy, but it just wasn't fun. And I realized I need to keep going to school. I'm not going to do this the rest of my life.
Yeah, you're like, I'm a knowledge work kind of guy.
I am a knowledge work kind of guy.
Yeah. No, I definitely understand that. I've been blessed to where, like, the few jobs I've had, I've enjoyed decently. I mean, like, I had a job doing catering stuff, like just carrying stuff, helping do that. And it was hard work, but I enjoyed it because at the end of it, you felt kind of satisfied. One thing I do hate, it's not a job, but I did do it to raise money for like mission trips and stuff like that. Fundraising, like being a salesman. I am not a salesman, man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm okay with getting somebody to do something I'm passionate about, but trying to sell something that someone doesn't need just so you can get money out of them, that feels so wrong. It feels like I'm using someone to try and get what I want.
Like when you were a kid and you had to sell like cookies or cookie dough or something as a fundraiser.
I never won any of those. Yeah. I never got top 10. Our class could have 11 people and I wouldn't be top 10.
Yeah.
Because I hated it. Oh, I hated it so much.
Yeah, it's true.
So that would probably be the worst to me. That'd be the worst to me. But that's all the time we got for
Yeah.
today. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. If you have any questions for us, once again, please send them to us. You can comment if you're on YouTube, or you can send us a message on Instagram at the Hey Dad Podcast, or you can email us at questions@heydad.us. Y'all have a good day, and we'll see you in the next episode.
We'll see you.
Thank you for joining us on the Hey Dad podcast. If you enjoyed the episode today, subscribe so you don't miss any new content. We'd also love for you to rate and leave a review and help us get the word out to more people. If these talks are making your life better, we ask that you share them with someone else. If you have any questions for us or anything going on in your life you want an opinion on, we would love to hear from you. You can email us at questions@heydad.us or send us a message on our Instagram page at the Hey Dad Podcast. Join us next week. We'll have a chair waiting for you.